Welcome back, everybody, to the 10th already. I mean, I can't believe we got here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's Willie, and here we go.
No, there's like that's I guess where the gateway is going away, right? That's where it's
Yeah,
more or less, in my opinion, where everything is now being voice controlled. All the TVs are smart enough. Uh, the problem is, I guess, the Masterlink products, right? That you kind of, if you're an extended collector or a long time B&O owner, then you kind of are SOL'd if you don't hop on the bandwagon, just like I guess, the BeoLink converters,
yeah.
which
I
I
still
think
don't
now
like
it's
that.
becoming a problem.
It's
What?
it's
The
it's no, that they literally ditched all that stuff.
No, I agree with you completely. And my biggest problem with it now is, um, okay, well, you've introduced the converter a while back, but put it this way, like I have clients that bought the BeoVision 12, 6, 7 years ago. Yes, it's an old TV if you think about it, but not really in B&O terms. Like
No,
this thing
it
is perfectly fine.
should have
It's
another
gonna
13
keep
years on
trucking.
it.
It's gonna keep trucking for at least another decade.
Yeah.
The way that they're using it, like that TV has, a few thousand, like, well, it's got 16,000 hours on the panel, but nonetheless, like it's working like a charm. But then the problem that becomes with it is the fact that these people now, okay, well, maybe 2 years from now, he decides, you know what, screw this. Like, I'm not that the TV's, going bad, but now the boys and everybody's like, well, dude, you should really hop on that 4K wagon and whatever, right? And I'm sure
Hmm.
that if the person goes into a friend's house that has a 4K TV, then that BeoVision 12 doesn't really stand a chance anymore when it comes to picture quality as resolution is concerned, right?
Yeah. True.
And then he goes, well, shit, yeah, it cost me 20 something thousand dollars, but like we both know what income class these people are, or we are buying this stuff. You just justify it over 10 years later. Yeah, I can buy another $20,000 TV. It's, I've got my money's worth out of the decade of whatever, or 15 years that I've owned the previous model of whatever it was,
Yeah,
right?
but that's
But the
exactly how
problem
I look
now,
at it as well. Like, I'm not
yeah,
necessarily in that income class, but it's like if something lasts you literally 10 times as long, what does it matter then?
no, it doesn't. It's the investment is there and it's returned, right? It pays
Yeah.
for itself over the longevity of the lifespan. But the problem that with it is now is, okay, well, good for you, sir. You have a 9,000. You have two passive kits, for patio speakers, whatever. You have a 3,500 in the house and a 9,000 with the 8,000s hooked up to it, right? And luckily for him, I did talked him into a converter because he bought the Essence Mark II to have his tune-ins and all that jazz. But there are people that I have now that want to buy the TV. I'm like, well, fudge. Yes, you can, but you are kind of SOL'd out of the Masterlink sources on your system,
Yeah,
because the only way to get them in
every
there
room
is
becomes
to,
individual again.
well, I
Sort
don't
of.
even know how would you deal with it, because, well, I guess if you have an audio master still, right? The problem is in the households where the only video master is the TV, right?
Hmm.
And then people have a couple of passive kits and whatever. Because there's few clients of mine that listen to music through the whatever, the channel 400 or whatever it's up in the, like the TV music that
Yeah.
they provide, right? That just the display goes blank and you listen to stuff.
Yeah.
But so that's how they listen to it distribute. But all of a sudden, like if you switch to TV now, it ain't gonna feed no master link, because it doesn't have a master link. But you
Yeah.
can't even get it out or in, because there is no way to inject it back into the master link line, unless you do a line output from the TV. God forbid that it's somewhere else, then you probably have to do two Viasat receivers, one for left and one for right channel, and put it into the AUX port on the back of a, let's say, 3200, and then assign a power link group to the flipping TV in order to have that aux input go in somewhere else to be able to listen to
Yeah,
your
but you also
television
then have to
sources.
manually turn on the other group, don't you?
Of course, you'd have to go and press AUX on the 3200, right, or anywhere else like in the gateway. If you had VLAN gateway, you could circumvent that by just simply issuing a one macro command that will turn on all these things together.
Hmm.
But not everybody has a gateway, more or less. Well, not most of my clients, but people that have an involved system or bigger systems, they do have. I talked them into the gateway because it just makes sense. It's easier to operate, and that was back in the day when the Bio Remote app was utter crap. it just wouldn't work. Like, it still is.
Not much has changed, just the look of the remote.
Well, they've abandoned it now, and now the Bang & Olufsen app, which I like, but I find it a little bit cumbersome. And what I dislike about it the most is if you're in the Eclipse's menu, or even the V1 for that matter, why not pull up the damned keyboard? You still have to use the arrows up and down, right? Like, no, just pull up the keyboard like it was on the older Beo Remote app. I believe that at some point the keyboard actually had worked, because I've seen it working. But it's something that I think should be there, so it's easier for you to enter that. Because I hate the up, down, left, right. Select the digit. It sucks.
Yeah, it's not quick at all. It's not. It's what you have on a lot of Apple TV boxes.
Oh God, I hate this. And
if
everybody
you're looking for something specific in YouTube, it takes forever.
Well, then you're better off just looking it up on the phone and then casting it to the Apple TV.
Yeah. Well, speaking of dumb devices, I almost wish Bang & Olufsen just had a dumb screen where you could, I don't know, put whatever you wanted up into it, like feed it something instead of having the screen be all smart and whatnot.
Oh, like a BeoSystem 5 type of thing?
Yeah, and just have a screen next to it. Like, the speakers and whatnot are fine. It's just the whole LG stuff. It's almost like, I guess you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but it works somewhat fine, but it's not as easy to navigate with the Beo Remote 1. So
no, it isn't.
So, like, make it a dumb screen, hook up an Apple TV, since that works roughly the same as with the Beo Remote 1. And then you have all the smart features that you can update whenever. And speaking of updating, as far as I'm aware, what my dealer told me, there won't be an upgraded panel for the Eclipse. So
I would doubt that they would be, because they're discontinuing the panels in October.
Yeah, so
LG.
I'm not sure if they just buy an extra like 2,000 for warranty periods, or
I'm thinking that's what the case would be, that they have a certain allocation that they do for warranties, hence the fact how Moment got discontinued, right?
Yeah.
Because the manufacturer of the screen, the LCD screen for the Moment, decided that that's it for that screen because it was quite old. Well, it is old comparing to how old the Moment is now, generationally speaking, in technology.
I still see it at every dealer, though.
That's what blows my mind, that, like, okay, so if I want to buy this, I can't.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like, we're advertising stuff we don't sell anymore.
Yeah, and then everywhere. That Moment is everywhere, and I just don't know why. If it's my biggest problem with it now is, you have a Core. I have a client that she basically gave up on the 9000.
Yeah.
Simply because they refuse to use distilled water in the humidifiers, and the humidifiers that they use in the house, like the regular household water, gets a calcium film on everything. Well, it coats the CDs as well as it coats the chassis and the lens and the whole bit in the 9000. And this is the third time that it's been for service in 4 years, because it just gets caked, right? And it's not even service like repairs; just needs to get taken apart and cleaned the shit out of.
Down and
and
some
so
vinegar
she's
and
stuck
stuff.
with it. And I come in there, well, what are the options now for B&O? Well, BeoSound Core. It's a boring product, and for a person that is in their 70s that are very simple in their mind, like, I just want to feed the disc into something and play it. It's no longer that. Now you have to have your phone, the apps. Yeah, now you have the phone, the apps, this and that,
But even the Core, isn't that more sort of like a connectivity hub for your phone? So it's actually not doing all that much.
I think all that it is, Core is just a PCB board with a DAC, a Wi-Fi chip, a Wi-Fi chip in it, and a network card, essentially.
Yeah.
That's about all there's to it, because it doesn't have anything else, and a couple LEDs, well, one for status, in few colors.
But
that's
maybe
about
a
it.
silly question, but so the reason why I say it, like, isn't it more for like your phone in a sense, like a connectivity hub, is so if, let's say, my girlfriend puts in Spotify, TuneIn, whatever on her phone to the Core, and she leaves with her phone, does it keep playing whatever was in the playlist, or does it stop because the phone loses network connection?
No. If you do Spotify Connect, it just keeps on playing. Deezer plays no matter what. if you're Bluetooth connected into it, yeah, then you're proximity based.
Yeah.
But no, like you can just the core works exactly like basically Moment. Well, no, I can't say that because you can't really stream into the Moment. But it works exactly like I guess A9 would work back in the day, where you could you could turn off your phone and the Spotify would not cut off, right? Like the playlist would be preloaded, I guess, or it talks to the server directly, bypasses you. Hence, I guess the advantage that you no longer get the notification sounds come up through your music when you're listening to it, right?
Yeah.
When you're streaming through Bluetooth, and all of a sudden you get these from the Facebook come through at 60 volume.
Like, why the bloody hell didn't they update this shit?
They should have made it. Well, I guess there was an argument even with the BeoCenter 2. Why not make it upgraded to a Blu-ray player? And apparently because the Blu-rays spin significantly faster, and that's one of the reasons why they didn't do the 9000, I guess, a redo, because there was a risk of spinning CDs falling out, which I find a little bit horseshitty.
I find that hard to believe. How does like a plastic thing from Sony then contain all that?
That's what I don't understand. That's one thing. And secondly, what I don't get is if you looking at it, the only time that I've seen that disc fell apart was I think it was the Slow-Mo guys or Mythbusters back in the day, where they have put it on a grinder at 40,000 RPMs or whatever, and that's when the disc just like shit the bed. But I don't see it happening inside the BeoCenter 2 or 9000 for that matter, to be honest.
Because I'm thinking for like the chassis and everything, you have the tooling for 95% of all the stuff you have to put in there already. It's set up and ready to go.
Yeah.
And I would also think like by ditching all that, you would almost like, besides ending a product, you'd almost also end the lifetime of all your equipment for making this.
Mm-hmm.
Because not everything is handmade or like CNC milled or anything. It just can't be.
No.
It takes too long.
No. But yeah, speaking of tuning, the interesting finding I had come across with the 90s, because I had to factory reset them, I've lost all my tuning, and I left the original defaults in as they were, and then I tuned the fourth one as my room.
Yeah.
And it is unbelievable difference in bass depth and the clarity of the focus of the music, like where everything is allocated. It's unbelievable to switch between them two. And the bass, I quite prefer, the narrow mode out of the box for later in night listening, because the bass isn't tuned properly, so it doesn't have as much boom, which you can switch it with the night listening mode as well. But it's quite a bit of difference. And I didn't think, because when you first listen to the speakers, you're overwhelmed anyways, regardless if they're tuned or not, because you're listening to something that
it's
out
just
of this
so
world.
Much volume.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
and then
what I found when I was listening to them, compared to most other speakers, it's the sound carries so much further.
Yes.
As in, that was quite surprising to me. As in, the mids and like the spoken word seems like it reaches out further into the room without sort of any sort of
diminishing
distortion. Yeah.
Yes.
And I even noticed that compared to the 50s, that the same sort of volume level is much more listenable on the 90s versus the 50s. As in, just people in a talk show were much more understandable at the same sort of distance with the 90s.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Because obviously you just grow desensitized to it once you have the 90s for so long. It's just...
Well, I'm already desensitized to the 50s, but
yeah,
I sometimes forget like this isn't normal sort of music sounding stuff anybody else listens to, and then you walk into like a friend's house or something like that, and the music is playing. It's like, where are all the notes gone?
Where's the rest of the music?
Yeah.
No, that's definitely something that is it's a constant struggle once you purchase these speakers, is to be quiet at your friend's house. Because it's like,
go
dude, this
to other
sounds
places.
awful. I figured, well, now I have credit on the account, so I'm gonna use it towards the shape. So I bought 8 tiles, and they're coming in. Except
8 tiles, but how many speakers?
4.
Okay.
4 is the minimum to do the band on the wall. Because 2 speakers, it just shows up as a regular stereo. And the reason for that is they're essentially using the True Image sound engine to make this band on the wall effect type of thing. And that's why you need, essentially, you basically need a center channel, right? That's where the 3rd or 4th speakers go and how that lays out. The most difficult part about the whole freaking shape is solidifying the design in your head, to agree with yourself on what you're, because there's so much you can, and put a tile here and then put a tile there.
Yeah, do you want it that way? Do you want it that way?
Yeah, and then you color it all, and then you're like, well, crap. Like, okay, well, do I want to have, odd number of tiles? So then I'm stuck with an extra set of grills, right? Because the grills come in pairs. Tiles comes as one, which to me doesn't really make sense at all. But
no.
Why do you sell it one and then you sell these in pairs? Sell everything as individual then, in my opinion.
I would think so too, but I bet you it would be the same price.
I have the whole 5500 system in white. That BeoMaster, BeoSound 5500. If you're pulling it up, you probably are. It's an old timer. That one has a birthday of my sister, 1987. That's when that was made.
Yeah, but
it's a great system.
Will never ever die.
No, not really. It's funny how they work. If you change the oil-filled caps for the new silicone ones, then yeah, you got another 100 years out of that thing, or whenever the boards disintegrate to shit. But otherwise, it's
but
it's
even
fun.
If you keep it in a reasonable house out of the sun and whatnot.
Oh yeah, it's a timeless piece. So is the 9000 or the 9500 back in the day.
I mean, I honestly agree with like my grandparents and whatnot. Like back then, stuff was built to last. It's not anymore.
No, but I guess speaking of the built-in obsolescence, would we progress as humanity as fast if we didn't dump the crap right away for newer? You know what I mean? Like, would you be still okay with having a dot matrix flip phone and shit?
Well,
you know what I mean?
No,
back
but
in the day,
there's areas where it's not sort of needed. So,
fair.
So, let's say in 5 years from now or so, would you be okay if they just outright stopped supporting the 90s?
Oh, I'd be pissed, all right.
Yeah, but there's a newer one. It's the BeoLab 100s.
Yeah. That's probably what will happen, too. It'll be whatever they're going to do for the 100th birthday.
Probably. I don't think they can actually make the BeoLab 90s any better musically, but I do have the feeling they can make it better size-wise.
That's what I think is going to happen. They're going to shrink it down a little bit.
Yeah, and just lighter. If
maybe that's probably what's going to happen, that they will replace the aluminum flipping engine block by ABS plastic.
I doubt it, because right now they use it as a heatsink. However, with the software and everything, it does really...
It's a shit show.
Yeah, it really puts also a longevity question mark in my mind. And I don't know if that necessarily is reasonable, but with all the silicon and whatnot, I have a feeling for the longevity. Like if something, I don't know, goes like in 10 years from now, will they still have like the boards and whatnot?
I think for the speakers I would say yes, because that's their boards that they design.
Yeah, but you know how they are. If they just decide to ditch something, they truly ditch something.
Yeah, but you know what, I don't see, like, look at the Lab 5s. You can still buy chassis for them. Like, they are still a supported speaker. Like, it's a flagship speaker as it was, obviously not anymore, but there is still support. You can still buy woofers for the 8000s and stuff. Like, not the Mark 1s, because that's a little too early in the yesteryears. But, you know, from the parts perspective, the only things that are really hooped out is the LCD panels for the BeoVision 7s, 10s.
But partially why I sort of quit the BeoLab ones is because there was basically no spare part to be found anymore.
And those are the unicorns. They're the only speakers that really there is no parts for. There's no amps. Oh, my technician actually has one spare amp, brand new. But yeah, they're those ones. I don't think that they were as successful speaker as B&O thought they would be.
Well, I love them. I thought they were terrific.
I love the Lab ones. Like I think they're awesome speaker, but the success rate, like they're very dominant, right? Like you have to like B&O a lot to put the Lab ones in your room because they are a statement.
And you don't
just
with
like
the 5s or the 90s?
Well, I was gonna say just like the 90s, like that's a statement that like 90s are a definite statement because they occupy so much room. But like comparing to we're talking 18 years ago when these speakers came out, right? Like that was fudge. Like there was no speaker that was this big, really. Like that was before the Lab 5s, right?
Yeah.
So that was a ballsy commitment essentially if you want to get the Lab 1s. But I'm thinking about them still. I may just get a pair.
Yeah, we had them since they came out, basically 2001, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were terrific. They did everything you asked of them ever. But what I loved is that they were tall and slim.
Yes.
And they were fantastic. I mean, maybe a little lacking in bass, but that's why I had a Lab 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and then whatever you threw at it was fine.
Like I think it's time for something new. Something sleek and slender. I hope that Thorsten is listening. And
Me too. He's always welcome to come on.
That's right. And I hope that he designs something nice and sleek and slender. Even though if it's a little chunkier, just like the 8000s or 18s, I guess, because they were thicker. And I never knew the 18s are thicker than the 8000s.
They don't look it, but it's probably because you see through the slats instead of like on a black sort of
gasket on the bottom of it. So you can't really adjust
that.
The 50s
also sit on a, I don't know, I want to say it's about...
Can you level them or no?
No.
Or they're on the rubber ring, just like the 5s, basically?
Sort of. The whole bottom is rubber.
Oh, weird.
It's sort of like they made that bowl and just stuck a layer of rubber underneath. And it's sort of like 5 to 8 mil of rubber, and it's, in my house anyway, it's not enough.
What do you mean?
They still shake.
It's transfers?
Yeah, and it transfers a heck of a lot of thumping into the floor. So I have them sitting on rubber tiles, and that helps a heck of a lot.
I had a unique opportunity when I was moving from apartment to apartment, or basically from one floor to the other. I did, because I was wondering how much are these going to thump when I move them, because I know that I have a neighbor underneath me now, right? And there was nobody living in the apartment that I'm in right now for a whole time that I was living up above myself, essentially. So I went downstairs. I came down here because obviously you can get the Wi-Fi network and everything is, I'm just a floor below me. And I turned on the app and I put on some shit like crazy, like not crazy dubstep, but what I knew that had got me that yellow Post-it note. It was a particular track that pisses some neighbors off because the bass is just, it rolls off and like, when we're talking 20 hertz, when that rolls off the speaker, and it's like that meme
your walls start shaking and that sort of stuff.
When I listen to Pink Floyd, so do my neighbors. Well, that's basically where that was at the time. So I was downstairs in this apartment and I turned the volume up like more than 3/4. Like I knew it was loud. You couldn't hear anything, but you could hear the bass. You could feel the bass. Yeah. And the weird part is like you could walk like directly where the speakers would be in this room. And you could, like, that's where the speakers are sitting. But they're so bloody heavy that they don't really move.
But they also have quite chunky feet. Or maybe it's just, it says more about us with Bang & Olufsen and software in general. Like, every time Eric's not around, everything goes to shit.
That's right. He's got the software spirit for us.
Yeah, whenever Eric's around, everything works, and...
Well, he's the only one that's got the shit working right for him still.
I still find that unbelievable. I'm almost jealous and annoyed at the same time. Like,
same here.
Like, what's he doing differently? I don't understand.
I don't know, but he's got the luck with the Eclipse.
I actually had an idea. Shall we talk about what the title of the show is today?
And what is the title of the show? A Broken BeoVision Eclipse.
Yeah, question mark. Because mine...
So is it?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if you guys in chat have an Eclipse or anything other expensive from Bang & Olufsen. So, as some of you may know, like it says in the title, I went on vacation, which is, I don't know, people seem to do every so often.
You're so crazy.
So, I literally unplugged everything expensive I had from Bang & Olufsen. I actually remember now I forgot to unplug the 18s, but whatever, they're fine. But
You didn't get struck by lightning, so it's good.
So I unplugged the Eclipse and the 50s just in case if I was gone and there was lightning or whatever, because it was supposed to be warm and rainy, and then, as most of you probably know, that gives a chance for lightning. So I come back and I turn everything on, and the TV says it's all up to date, which I found odd since there are supposedly some updates. So I manually look for updates, and it says it's all updated again. It then, midway through watching TV, decides to update anyway, after it just told me it was up to date. So all of a sudden the TV just goes off and goes into standby mode and starts updating.
Blinking on the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, that was all fun and games. And then my stand was gone after that. I mean, this really deserves a slow clap, Bang & Olufsen. Like, bloody hell. It wasn't only gone from the remote, it was also gone from the menus in the TV.
Well, yeah, because that's where the TV generates the remote's menus, right? So it just nukes the shit out of everything. Because I'm sure the remote updated as well, didn't it?
It didn't.
Okay, weird. Because usually it comes with the software.
I know. Normally it shows you like the status bar and everything, but I had it in my hand the whole time and nothing happened. And after it was for a while, I literally had it lying right here, and I was on my computer, and nothing happened. All of a sudden, everything was just gone. Which was super odd. So I texted you like, should I do a factory reset or is that going to be horrible? And fortunately you told me not to do anything, so I was like, fuck it, I'll deal with it on Monday.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden this morning it works again, and it's back in the remote, and it did another software update.
I think that the first software update that you got that you thought was the update that was issued out was the one that was the brick prevention software, right? I think
it wasn't, because I got a whole release note thing.
Oh, weird. And then it reinstalled itself all over top of itself again.
Apparently. I have no idea what happened. It was bizarre.
Well, shit, it works at least.
Well, yeah, it came back. But after it came back, it also decided updates are no longer needed, because it unchecked the box for automatic updates.
That's probably for safeguarding you anyways.
Yeah.
Because the next update, you're going to lose something.
So it's like, that's always on, however annoying it is, because the last few times it ever updated, it decided to update while I was watching something. I don't know what to do anymore. Also, my... preferred screen setting, it was a bright room expert, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
That's what I always start watching in, because I had it just exactly like I like it, which works the best for here.
Did your speaker groups get buggered up?
No.
Or you don't have?
Well, I have several, but those were fine. But it's the TV started up in Vivid again, which is weird because I never watch Vivid. Because like red is too red and blue is blue enough compared to the red, and it's
freaking Vivid, dude.
Yeah, it sort of hurts your eyes if it's anything but super bright in the room.
Exactly. No, I don't like the Vivid mode. I watch it on standard, and then I actually did switch it what you had, expert bright, because my room is bright as hell, and sometimes I switch it to expert low in the evenings.
Yeah, that's what I do as well. On the BeoWorld forum, everybody's screaming about, like, please make a sound bar where all this stuff is integrated, and I'll choose my own picture.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, ask me for ridiculous money for a soundbar. Make the soundbar $5,000 or euro days or
It's
6
still
grand euro.
reasonable. It
I
would
mean,
still be reasonable for B&O because
yeah.
it would look nice, and like just have a couple connections
I
into
mean,
it, and that's it.
literally ditch the 3000 LG bit and we'll have that.
Yeah.
So it's, I would quite honestly like that as well, because one of the things you preferably, I foresee for the future, want to upgrade more often is the screen, not the speakers.
Well, that's it. And personally, I think that BeoSystem 5, or so call it that, is long time overdue. Because that is
Well, it can even be a
that is exactly
BeoSystem
the
5
platform
without
that I
the
would want.
video processing in
Shit,
it.
that's exactly what I would like to have. And it's funny because B&O Herning, their big speaker turning wall and all that jazz,
Yeah.
they're using a BeoSystem 4 to drive it. There's no picture, but because you can add so many speakers, right? And the speaker groups you can assign, so you can have the speakers change from 18s to 20s to 90s to 5s in real time within a continuum of the same music. The only way to do that is through a System 3 or System 4 or System 4 processor, not System 3.
Yeah.
But that's where I think that B&O should focus, in my opinion. That I don't know how much of the video technology department has been retained in the yesteryears, I guess, or right now, because I don't see that they're doing much. But I wonder if I think it would be more feasible for them to do a BeoSystem 5 and a platform that, here you go, you can just have an HDMI cable going into your display panel of whatever kind you decide to go with.
Have you seen the new Samsung TV with their connectivity sort of box? You get it with the TV and you can control just about anything in your house. Well, obviously, especially Samsung, but
of course,
I've seen it. This came out at CES, I think, and it's they actually have I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy, but I think it comes with an aluminium remote. Actually, it doesn't have like a screen on it, but I don't think. But it's like a remote only about that size, so half the size.
Like an Apple remote.
Yeah, and it's sort of
Sort of.
And it's sort of, I think it's also sort of magic remote-esque thing. But you can do most things from your remote, and you have a control box that comes with the TV, and you can control just about anything you can connect to it.
Wow, no, I did not know that. You know what? Quite honestly, I'm so deep in the B&O bubble that I don't really care to follow everything else. I guess
Yeah.
If you look at doctors, they're specialists and they don't follow general medicine anymore because it's just too much bullshit to be reading through. And that's basically where I'm at. I'm specialized in a certain product, and if people have questions and they want to talk about Samsung and all that jazz, I'm like, well, you know what? Go to CNET or whatever the review sites and go somewhere there. They'll probably tell you way more about it than I'm ever gonna, and for the rest is Google.
Yeah, but the reason partially why I'm also interested in it is that, first of all, I like tech of all sorts, but secondly, it's also to give Bang & Olufsen a fair comparison. Like,
yes,
because if you then see what Samsung charges for their stuff that actually works out of the box, and if they have software glitches, it's not so. It's
not ridiculous.
Imposing on all the basic functions of everything.
Yes.
It's sort of like, why am I paying this again for Bang & Olufsen? So get off your ass, B&O.
Yeah, you get a polished aluminum. That's pretty much it. Nicely anodized.
Yeah, and I like that. I'm willing to pay more for that because I love that stuff. And I think it's timeless in most senses of the word. Like,
yes.
It'll probably look good in 40 years. But it's just like nickel plating for that matter. But anyway, it's sort of like, that's very surface. Like, if I want to buy art that's polished aluminium, I'll buy polished aluminium art. But if it has to perform any sort of function, like music, like video, or anything of that kind, it actually kind of has to sort of be justified in the price a bit. Like, and I feel up to, I don't know, up to the Eclipse. Well, actually, that's not totally correct. Up to the Android platform, I always thought it was justified. Like, the prices of Bang & Olufsen were ridiculous, but you always had probably the top 5% of screens,
Yeah.
Maybe not the best,
The
but
software was
very,
solid, you know.
very
I
much
hated
not far off it. And the software was rock solid, and you could control everything in your grandmother with the software, basically. So it was.
No, I
don't know.
completely agree with you. I hated when the when the V1 first came out as the brand new chassis or the video engine. I hated it, but the software wasn't there. There was still glitches, but you know, this TV is Linux based, and that thing is solid as rock. Once they got those kinks out in the very early stages of those TVs, I've never had issues. I absolutely love it. I'm very disappointed that they went where they went with it as far as the menus and all that jazz, and you know, like turning off the Bluetooth module in the freaking panel of the Eclipse because, well, we can't control it, so we just turn it off. Well, fuck. How can I listen to my headphones now? I used to have them on the 14. I used to have them on the Horizon. They all connected Bluetooth. Now you're telling me my H8s are useless because the module's turned off because you guys can't control it?
Yeah, and then if you ask about it, you get a Bluetooth dongle that you still have to put in the USB thing.
Well,
of
it's
the
a
TV.
Bluetooth dongle of a very specific kind because then there's latencies issues, right, with the spoken word. And then how do you compensate with that or for that? What, you know, obviously there is really no headphones output, so you got a PowerLink RJ45 to a Dweeby 3mm connector plug. You assign the speaker group for that, and then you have to put, I forget how many meters of distance there is in order to compensate for the lag that is being done because of the transmission. Sure.
Yeah. Speaking of wireless, what are your thoughts on the whole WiSA protocol?
I've never had issues with it, to be honest with you. Never had issues whatsoever. I've updated the firmware or software, if you want to call it that, on the transmitter and the receiver, or the 17s, because these were never updated, and I've missed like 4 software versions on the 17s. I didn't see any difference in performance. Quite frankly, right now they're unplugged because I have no purpose for them. But I've never had any issues. And back to the point when we talked about a few podcasts back ago with you saying that the PowerLink sounds better than the WiSA.
Yeah.
50s. I honestly, there is no difference on the 90s. I've plugged in. I've listened to the exact same song, and there's no difference.
Oh, weird.
In sound quality. No difference in depth. No difference in highs. No whatsoever. It's exactly the same.
That's odd because I hear it immediately in the 50s. At least in both of my pairs I've had. I guess they were both faulty, so maybe that's.
That could be that. But what I wonder also is, I don't know, like they're saying that they've recycled most of the stuff from the 90s. I still think there's something more to the 90s because I've listened to some really shitty encoded music, and the way that these things fix the sound, it's unbelievable. You can still tell, right? It exposes everything. You can almost see the blocky bits of music coming out of them. If it's like 128 or 256 kilobytes a second stream.
Oh no, but the most important bits I've already checked. The most important bits aren't salvaged. I guess the techniques of how to do it, but like even the mid-range drivers are by different brands, but that's just the drivers. Then the power supply is different. The DSP is different. It's of a lower grade or lower capability, and there's only one instead of 2. So that makes. I still don't understand that decision. Like, why would you, like, have the main one DSP in your master speaker, then have to control a speaker that's further away, because you're gonna get latencies over whichever way you connect to that.
Yes.
So that still boggles my mind.
Cost efficiency, right?
Yeah, but that's still stupid because, like, look what it gets you: a bunch of complaints.
And I don't know about the boards, but I really don't think and see that those boards are that ridiculously expensive. No, if you're charging $50K for a speaker that is made more or less from ABS plastic and cladded with aluminum, put some good fucking electronics in it.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. The DSP and the BLAB 50s, I can buy off a Belgian site for €40.
Yeah, we talked about that a few podcasts back, the parts. So
but that's
what I'm saying. Like, I don't see it being that cheap. As far as or
the
that
thing is that the DSP for the 90s aren't that much more expensive. They're like 60-ish, but they have 2 of them. like one for each speaker.
Yes.
And the 50s have one of them that's cheaper for 2 speakers.
Oh, interesting.
And
That's
they
where the
also
cost
work
cut
at a
makes.
different megahertz. So the DSP in the 50s is also slower at processing the signal and whatnot. It's not much, but I mean it's 50 megahertz if I remember right. But on like they run at 450 megahertz in the 90s and 400 megahertz in the 50s. I mean, so 50 megahertz difference on that little is already something.
Well, it's quite a bit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's a 1/8 of it, almost.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
But
That's
yeah,
too funny.
the Weiser for me has been somewhat troublesome, especially with the 50s. I think it's a very ingenious thing. However, I think they thought of it at the wrong time. Because I'm not sure how long it'll last with the rise of 5 gigahertz networks for regular internet.
Oh, with the WISA?
Yeah.
I have 5 gigahertz internet here or network.
Yeah, but 1, 2, 3, how many?
There's about 10 around me right now that I can see. And I have, like, the only time that this cuts out is in the goddamn microwave, man. And it was only through the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's not the WISA that cuts off. Because the TV, when I would play the TV, or watch TV rather, and the speakers would be going and I would do something to heat up in the microwave, it would not cut off. It's only the 2.4 gigahertz frequency that the moment operates on is what goes poopy.
Well, that's odd because, like, I mean, I've had issues. Eric is the one issue he's ever had, it seems like, is when he turns his Apple TV 4K on to the 5 gigahertz network, that his 18s just shit the bed. And they turn off. That's what I think he said 3 weeks ago, something like that. Like, so he has to now, if he wants to use his Apple TV 4K, whatever you call it, on the 5 gigahertz network, he has to hardwire his 18s in. Because
why don't you hardwire the damn TV? The box.
Yeah,
I would just hardwire the Apple TV.
I don't know how his house is like wired up.
But yeah, but I think that would be way less of a headache than going through the cables and to back of the wall on the other side of the apartment.
So I don't know. It's
we'll pick his brain on next Sunday if he's feeling a little better.
Yeah, I mean it's just odd to me. Like, so I have a feeling like WISA was a terrific idea because it seems like when they considered making it and actually started sort of, I don't know, introducing it and sort of building out on it, there were hardly any 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi networks around. Like, that wasn't really a thing yet. But as the more that sort of spectrum gets congested, the harder it's going to be to operate well.
But they're further off that spectrum that what the conventional 5 gigahertz network operates. That's what I find interesting, that his network.
It depends a bit
Apple
on the
TV
network strength,
off.
though. So if you have a weak-ass router, it's not so bad. But if you have like one of these new 8 antenna double everything things, and if you have both your neighbors also doing that, it becomes a bit much. With regards to WISA, by the way, have you ever are you aware of any limitations? Because last time I asked about a bunch of stuff with all the issues I've had, I was told about several limitations, as in like speakers shouldn't be more than 10 meters away from the original source, as in if you use an Eclipse, the speaker shouldn't be more than 10 meters away. Also, you're basically not shouldn't have an airport extreme or like one of these sort of NAS
Wi-Fi blasters,
yeah, but it's also like a sort of Apple NAS device, yeah, the sort of NAS thing did something to it, so it couldn't be between the source and the receiving end, and between the TV and the speaker receiving it, your router had to be 5 meters away on another side. So not like in the middle. So if you have your TV in front of you and the speaker's there, the router couldn't be here. It had to be like off to the side somewhere.
That sounds like a lot of Denmark findings to me. That's what that is.
Sure, but that's what I've been told about WISA. And it's sort of limitations.
I've read about it, and what you're saying is true because they are referring to this. However, when we used to have a store downtown in Calgary here, you're right in the core. I would face on average about 72 wireless networks that you could see from all the shops and peoples and offices and everything that was blasting us. I had the pair of 17s connected to the Avant 55, because that's what it was back then, at the very, very front of the store. And I took the 17s and moved them all the way to the back. I didn't go through no walls. It's just basically almost like a direct line of sight.
Yeah.
They were at least 15 meters away, if not more. Never dropped. Never dropped.
Maybe it's a European
and they
thing.
were
Maybe
in between. In between that was the router for all of our shop. That was, if that was the Avant router, and then there was the 17s, and I put a whole bunch of stuff in. I even tried just to see if they drop on the from the transmitter. Like I would take a whole bunch of coax and wire and just throw it on the transmitter just to block it and see if I can shield it RF on to diminish the signal somehow. I've honestly have not had it fall off at all. I've had it fall off. I had it fall off with the Eclipse, but that was the DSSC board was pooped. I had the left speaker and right speaker, and I noticed every now and then, more or less in the music. So I would listen to the 90s only, but obviously, all of the speakers are powered up because I'm in Alberta and I don't support the eco mode. I don't need this shit to be turning off. I don't care. Let it run.
Yeah.
But you noticed every now and then that the speaker just comes on and then it just comes off, and it goes. It never flashes orange, which is what means that it's a weak signal, but it would reboot itself. Now, saying that is also, I have just updated the firmware on the speakers, and I gotten rid of the Eclipse, so I can't comment if that error was corrected. But that being said, the 17s that I had were the original firmware build, which is 4 versions ago. And also the transmitter that I used to play with them was quite old in the software terms. But I've updated both of them. They all work. I've never had issues. And quite honestly, I guess the apartment is the best way to attest to how well and strong and rigid WISA is, because you have no control over who is beside you and whatever.
Yeah.
And if that becomes convoluted enough, then I will do what's necessary and I'll run the power links to the speakers. And that's the end of it. But I still see an application of it. If you have a log cabin or something where there is no question in pulling cable whatsoever, the WISA is your holy grail and savior.
Oh, definitely.
There is no other way.
If you live in a detached house somewhere, go for it. It's fantastic.
You're laughing.
Yeah, but if I guess you and I, at least mostly me, and maybe me and Eric in that sense more. If you live in any sort of apartment building downtown area where everything is close together, where you can get, I don't know, everybody's neighbor's, your neighbor's neighbor signal.
That's right.
Then it might be more of an issue. Yeah.
Has this been built over an old graveyard?
Yeah, something like that.
Because, man, you're digging up some old spirits.
But that's partially because I was told that at the beginning of my whole interest in newer stuff like the Eclipse. And when people told me, dealers told me that about WISA, I was like, well, then bloody well hardwire everything. And they were like, but why not use WISA? And it's like, or WISA. And I was like, you just told me that it's shit, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it'll work fine. It's like, but I just told you where I live, right? I have 5-6 neighbors.
Blasting, that's...
And they're all non-tech people, so they have their ISP thing, and it just broadcasts everything, and they don't give a shit. Yeah.
So, Sandeep, do you have problems with WISA, or no?
He just said he stayed away from it because if his installer said not to. I mean, that's what I was saying. They basically told me all the do's and don'ts, and the don't list was too long for me. And then they were still sort of amazed that I said, well, hardwire everything.
Yeah, I would still. I've honestly, I have never, and I have few clients that run WISA predominantly, and that's it. I have never had issues with any knock on freaking wood here, but I never had issues with it dropping out.
Yeah, coming back to the BeoSound Shape, can you actually use them as rear speakers, or still no?
Yes.
that's ready and up and going now, or they're just still thinking about writing the software for it?
I don't think. Well, okay. Well, let's rephrase that question. In what way you're thinking about it to use it? If you just want to use them as a let's say you have two shapes, right? You would have to have an amplifier in each, and let's say you put two speakers in it, and then you just do a wireless receiver into each amp, and then you have that channel, and then you have the shape on the wall playing rears.
Okay, so I meant more with like use them as surround sound, as in like rear speakers for when watching a movie, that you can use one as a left rear and one as a right rear.
Well, you could do that, but you couldn't do it as with the core connected to it. You would have to have just either, if it's on the same wall, then you could have one amp that's feeding, let's say, two channels, and you can build the tiles around it, because you don't really care for the algorithm that it's going to give you for the core, because you're just having an amplifier that pushes left and right. Yeah. So
because I was initially thinking of that for a while, because I just love the idea of not seeing speakers, or well, you see them but you have no idea that they are speakers unless you sort of turn them on. And that's what I love with a lot of Bang & Olufsen. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think the 90s are speakers if you don't know that that is a Bang & Olufsen speaker.
No, I've had people like, oh my god, these are some huge lamps you have. I'm like, well, yeah, they light the place up all right. They do light it up.
Yeah.
But that's,
even the 50s don't really look like speakers. Not what people think
it's a
of.
sculpture.
Like, yeah.
It's a piece of art. That's what they look like to me.
So,
but
yeah. So that's, but when they were launched, I remember they said that at some point you could integrate them with a Beo Vision of any kind, and like if you got two shapes, I guess.
Shapes.
Yeah, it sounds weird to say that, but you can use one as a left rear and or front for that matter. So you could do like TV center, and you could do four shapes if you wanted to.
You could still do that, but you would do it with the WiSA transmitters and WiSA receivers on each. Yeah.
Because I think at that point it was, I asked, could it be done? But again, this is like a while ago, and I haven't written it down. And I was like, can you do it?
You could do it, but you can't have a core. You can't have a BeoSound core hooked up to it. Like, it wouldn't be a BeoSound shape. It would basically be just it would be almost indifferent if you were to run them off of a passive kit or an amplifier one or an amplifier that comes with a tile. It would make no difference. And I think the amp in a tile would probably work the best, because they're obviously gauged towards it. And I think that's the only amp that you would really have to run, because now that I think of it, I don't think there is crossovers built into the speaker tiles. All that is done inside the amplifier, because you have 4 connection points into each speaker, meaning that you're plus minus into the bass driver and plus minus into the tweeter. So the crossover is done inside the bloody amplifier, more or less, than the speakers. But I'm sure that if I were to open, which I'm going to open the tile and look inside to see if there is anything else other than speaker driver and the acoustic foam liner inside the speaker tile for the shape.
Yeah, I wonder.
Because the amplifier
I don't think there's crossover. I think there's a simple crossover between the... Because there's like in the tile there's a mid-range and a tweeter per speaker tile, right? If I remember right.
Well, the tweeter and a bass driver, but then why would you need? What do you need a crossover for when you're feeding each driver individually from the actual amplifier? That crossover network is built. Yeah. It's crossed over on the amplifier stage. I'm sure as heck of it.
Yeah,
but I'll be more smarter in 3 weeks when it shows up in here, and I'm gonna play with it. Well, I'm going to what I'm planning on doing. You could just say
smarter, but
more smart. I'm gonna be more smart. Yeah, I'm gonna be way more smart than that. I'm going to get them cut into a shape essentially as a plywood go, because I want to make like a traveling speaker type of thing. Because it's okay to demo it here, but I think it's better to demo it. I have a couple builders that I'm pursuing right now as far as the condo developments are concerned, and I don't think that it would be a bad idea to throw one of these in the showroom.
No. mean, they
Because people
sound very good.
like
My dealer, I think, has one with like 18 tiles or something silly like that, and
Holy
it
shit, that's
sounds
awesome.
fantastic. Yeah, it was literally like you cross your arms and
It's huge.
you can barely touch it.
18 tiles is huge because I've messed around. I think I got up to 12, and it's not even that it gotten cost prohibitive, but it would look way too out of place for the small wall that I was planning to put it on.
Well, the wall wasn't big; it was just sort of more decoration, and it looked very good.
Mm-hmm. No, well, if you have 4 speakers, based on what I've doing the digging around and whatever, they are acoustic performance of a 1.5 BeoLab 17s.
Which is
It's
sort
not
of
bad.
expensive for the money, though. But it does it. Besides everything else, it's much more of an art statement, and
Oh, for sure.
it
Like I
looks
understand
way better on the wall, in my opinion.
than 17s by a long run.
Yeah.
By a long run. It's a lot more committed install though as well, because you can't really just like, oh shit, I'll just take these speakers with me somewhere. Like, no, they're in there. That's essentially exactly what we're talking about. What you've pulled up on the chat with the shape. That's almost the same shape that I have designed. Little different, but it's very, 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 very close to it.
I guess eventually, over time, the only other thing you could do is flip it, like 90 degrees on its side.
Well, but you can build it that way then, I guess, right? What I would really like for them to do is make it so you could utilize it as a ceiling speaker.
Yeah.
For me, like I would do it here as a Dolby Atmos to put it up top and make like it would totally bring the acoustics down as well, or echo in this room. Be way less hallway, and go from there. What Sandeep is asking, he hasn't heard the shape, but he says that it's a it isn't. If you have in order to make that called or activate the software algorithm to make it a BeoSound shape, you do need at least 4 speakers.
Yeah.
You need one busy amplifier fully. And the reason why, essentially, they're utilizing the true image algorithm that was developed for the TVs back in the day, starting I guess with the BeoVision 11 and V1 introduction, and that's how that algorithm works. Now it works more or less on it's not a 2.1. It's very immersive actually. If you stand in front of it, I've only listened to a 4 speaker shape, so the image, the center vocals are exactly like the center vocals. Like imagine listening to a BeoVision 11 in stereo, and then you turn the stand and the acoustic imaging just goes to hell because it's pointing somewhere else now because the panel has turned. And that's exactly what happens, I guess, with speakers when you walk about. You either hear the left more because you're closer to it, or you hear the right more because you're closer to it. But the way that algorithm works, it actually brings the vocals directly into the center of the soundstage of the shape, and it fucking works really well.
I agree.
It works really well.
It's very odd. Really it's I don't know. I would almost compare it for. I don't know if you have an Eclipse or not, but like listening to only your Eclipse in like 3.0 mode.
Yes.
That's almost what it sounds like, but imagine it sort of being wider and higher.
And much deeper in bass.
Yeah.
The bass is it's more defined. The Eclipse's bass, I find, sounds very harsh in some points. Like, depends on what frequency, tone level, or how loud you're talking, but
I find my Eclipse to be way too bassy, personally.
Like yeah, it's a BeoPlayer sound to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's no way to turn it down individually.
No.
And what I find especially annoying is that if in a 5-point whatever surround setup, you have to disable the full range drivers at the end, but you still get the boominess, and you can't do much about it.
No, unless you reassign the bass in the advanced settings, or just shave it off of the drivers. I did all that,
and
it's still
too like. I may be extra sensitive to it, so most people probably think it's fine. But I still think it's like I would go if I had the like individual function, I think I would put like -3 or so still on the center channel for bass, and the rest is fine. Like treble and mid, fine, don't touch it. But just bass is a bit too much still, especially in So my girlfriend was watching something this afternoon. When there's a lot of sort of deeper male voices, it almost makes the bass too much for like normal center channel speech. Yeah. And then if all hell breaks loose and explosions and that sort of stuff, obviously you notice it as well. It never rattles anything, or that's not it, unless you get to like, I don't know, 70 or so on the volume range.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's not totally what. To put it this way, I much preferred, to an extent, the BeoVision 10 as a center speaker, for the exact reason it was so lacking in bass. Like voices were always super clear.
The voice were clear as heck, yeah. That's
but for like any sort of music and or explosions from the center channel, it was crap.
Oh, forget about it, man. It was.
But for like conversations people were having in the center channel, it was a lot nicer. So I don't know, it's a bit of a give and take, I guess, in the end. I mean,
it always is.
Probably the best sounding center speaker for my personal preference is still the 1155. Because that's different than the 1146.
Yeah, I like the 7.4. I had an issue with the 1150, like altogether with the BeoVisions, and obviously, I have a 90s for a reason. I like the music, I like the sound, I like the clarity of it. But if you just do a little tungy on the angle of the TV, that imaging goes away because you're no longer. You have to move yourself as well, and that's what I had a problem with the BeoVision 11. And the problem that I have with it, when you have people in your house and shit, right? Like you want to share the experience. I call me selfish, but I just don't like when, like if the speakers are in a wide mode like that, because that whole, like I would rather sit on my Eames bench here and be uncomfortable and watch you sit on the chair and listen to the speakers and enjoy it properly than to have this a mixed, the cold slaw of everybody's having a semi-good time acoustically. No, you sit here because these speakers have a purpose, and their purpose is to play music for one person, really. All this other shit is afterthought, really. Like they just gave you a deal that you can actually put them in the Omni mode or make them wide and whatever, because that's just, it's I guess a derivative of a byproduct that you have now 5 walls of speakers. Then hey, shit, we can utilize those somehow.
Yeah.
And but otherwise, no, I'm pro narrow mode. Nothing is made in Denmark anymore, including the 90s. It's all they're made there or fabricated. They're assembled in Czech Republic.
But the 90s are made in Denmark, aren't they? That's just about the last thing made there.
No. My first pair, the black ones, were Denmark. These are already designed in Denmark, made in Czech Republic.
Seriously?
Shit you not, man. Everything is offset to Czech Republic. When I was there in 2016, back in the day when the BeoVision 11 was around and Tua Montoni was making videos around and sitting in the factory and talking bollocks behind the things and screens and the factory production and all this shit was going on. That entire facility is now an Idea Land. It's basically office desks.
Oh dear God, I hate that so much. Idea Labs. It's just basically a fancy word for renting out the space.
Well, they're renting it to themselves because it's their ideas, but I think that they should sublease some of that space to software.
That's where you get the
issues.
Fucking hipster influences from.
Well, there goes the BeoPlay promo pictures. Which, oh my God, I honestly do not know, nor do I care. Yeah. But I would love to find out why they're doing it in such weird fashion. Because
I bet you it's that Idea Lab. I didn't know that, but I'm pretty sure it's like, because all these Idea Labs, all the people that go to those sorts of things are generally kind of pretentious.
Yeah, but I don't know who dropped acid in the coffee in that particular office, but man, what are we doing with the photographs on this? Like, and these people, they're like these expressionless gnomes. that are on, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, a semi-hot girl staring into a distance of a mirror.
Yeah, but
you
everybody has weird
deranged?
haircuts and or clothing, and
Well, that too. I haven't gotten to that yet, but it's just like, why? And where are you looking at? You're not even looking at yourself. And, with the headphones and whatever and the weird poses, like, what are you, like, mid-fall, or what's going on with you? That, like, where do you get this kind of like, I just don't get it. I'm sorry to rant, but that whole Beo play just
I don't
chafes
think
my
it's a
nuts,
rant.
man.
I think it's actually warranted. Like, it's been bugging me for a while now. And I think I was the first one to speak up about this like 3-4 weeks ago, and I got really fucking annoyed about it.
Oh man,
Because it keeps on popping up on my Instagram as well, and I don't follow any hipsters. So it's like, oh, for God's sake.
apparently.
Like, I like Bang & Olufsen in general, but get this shit out of my way. This is horrible.
It's not worth the bandwidth, guys. Come on. It's not worth the bandwidth. I don't know. I don't understand the promotion. Like, looking into like the yesteryear's magazines of B&O, and I'm talking even the 80s, like some of the magazines that I pulled off from clients that just gave it to me, right? Like, oh, look, there's, with the pricing and stuff still in it back, with the pencil drawn and whatnot. But it had class, it had style. It was like like if you go to a well put together restaurant and everything just works and it's classy and it's got style and it just works. And now there is really no, like, what is there to promote really, as far as like, there's no catalog anymore. Like, it's a B&O magazine with articles that, not even a pigeon gives a shit about. And then you have the last 4 or 5 pages are glossy pictures of everything that could work if the software was proper on it, right?
I actually found that through some of the old stuff from my parents' passing. I found some original sort of, I don't know what to call it, sort of promotional material / catalogy stuff from Bang & Olufsen, and it was from like the mid 80s. And like most of the text was in black and white, with some like non-important pictures were also black and white, because black and white printing was what they could afford apparently. And there were like 5 or 6 pictures. Yeah, and this was like the launch of the 8000s, and I also found one where the 4000s had just come out. It's all in Dutch, so it's
of course
pointless for anybody else unless they're Dutch, but. I found it and I read through it, and there were like literally there was an interview with I think David Lewis also, which was like 2 pages just text, like what did you want to do, how did you come to it, yada yada yada, what were the setbacks,
all about the detail of it.
And I don't, besides the picture of the interview, I don't think there were any picture of people in there at all. Like, it was
because they don't matter.
Yeah, it was pictures of products. And like, this is how you potentially could use it, and the houses looked somewhat normal, not like, oh, you must have like a few million to spare to put this over there.
Yeah.
Which was
not some imaginary porn mansion that, like, that's not nobody has this in real life, but that's what you could have,
Yeah, it was refreshing, quite honestly, just to, I don't know, to get to the simplicity of the product. Yeah.
But they explained, because there was heart put into it, right? Where nowadays, like, I guess the last cool book was the last book that they have done, and then the rest of it, there's really just goes by the wayside. There's no story to anything anymore. At all.
I don't think anybody cares that much. But I also think that's somewhat.
Do they care or do they not? Do they care because, or they don't care because it's not brought up there? Because tell me, like, that I'm wrong, I guess, but. If you're going to buy a set of Lab 90s or Lab 50s, wouldn't you fucking want to read up about, like, let's see how you guys come to this and, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would love to find out, at least a 5-6 page article about, how did we get and what drove us to get to this point with the speakers that we have now developed.
I found that story, but the only person that seems to me any worthwhile of interest is, what's his face?
Jeff Martin?
Yeah. Like, and his story, it almost reads like how he came to the 90s, because that's honestly how it reads. Like, he had an idea, he tried something, and Then he had to persuade a few people to actually come along with it. And
to make a plywood box with all these speakers and then mock-up models, and then goes from there. Yeah, no, I agree with you, but
he's the last interesting person in this whole fucking company to me. Like, I think it's amazing what he does, and I think he's a true genius. And I love to read more about him, but to me, maybe he doesn't want to. I can also see that. But to me, they should push him more to the forefront. Because the design
He's the acoustic face of the B&O.
Yeah, but that's almost more important nowadays, because the sort of design is not non-coherent anyway. For the bigger sort of non-Beo play stuff, the most important thing is the great sound, I would say. Because if the design is incoherent, are you going to just push all these designers on us? Like, I don't care if they're just going to be gone in 5 years anyway.
Yeah, well, designers are designers. The speakers will stay with you for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
And just the language that...
I feel that's also been somewhat of a cultural change over the last 20 years or so. Like, people don't expect to keep a job for longer than 5 years. Everybody, thank you for watching. We'll be back next week, hopefully with Eric. If he feels any better, we'll try and... I hope so. Yeah, me too.
Come back, Eric.
If you're watching this, get better soon. And
let us know about the Eclipse update, because Mikey's is working properly now. So let's see. Maybe the table's turned.
My button's still aren't working.
He's crying in the house right now.
Yeah, my buttons still aren't working, but we'll see. Whatever. We'll see.
I want to hear him. I want to hear his feedback, because it's two different Eclipses, right, in two different countries, and I'm gonna go into my clients that I've sold him mine, and I'm gonna update it as well and follow up on it, and I'll report back to see how smooth and everything else going.
DSSE board.
Could be.
I don't know.
Because if you bought yours very early, that like we both are in the pre-production models, or more or less like the...
I think unfortunately I was. Thank you, everybody. See you next week.
Guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.